Until recently, this was the top of the Soviet line, the Soviet T-62. If we had to go to war today, you would see more of this tank than you'd ever care to. The T-62 weighs 37.5 metric tons, is 9.3 meters long, and 3.3 meters wide. With a 115-millimeter smoothbore main gun, this gun is stabilized and has a bore evacuated 2/3 up the barrel. The T-62 has a V12 diesel engine that puts out 580 horsepower and a road range of 450 kilometers. The tank is fully tracked, has 5 road wheels and no track return rollers. It carries a snorkel and smoke generating equipment. And both the commander and gunner have infrared searchlights. The basic load is 40 rounds, HE frag, heat, and a hypervelocity armor-piercing fin-stabilized discarding sabot round with a muzzle velocity of 1,615 meters per second. This round is accurate out to a maximum effective range of 1,600 meters. But as always, the Soviets aim to put you on the spot. Since the early 1970s, they have been building 2 newer tanks, the T-64 and the T-72. Both the T-64 and T-72 are faster, more mobile, and have better protection and a bigger gun than anything we may have encountered in a medium tank. So let's take a good look at them, see how to spot them, check their combat capabilities, and then review some ways that we can fight them and win. This is a model of the T-64. An important recognition feature for the T-64 is the suspension system. It includes 6 small stamped all-metal road wheels and 4 track return rollers. The T-64 is the first Soviet medium tank on which this arrangement appears. The probable torsion bar suspension and small wheels contribute substantially to improved cross-country mobility and agility. The track design differs from that of the T-62 in that 2 live rubber-bushed pins are used to link track blocks together, not one as in the T-62. The Soviets, by going to a live track system in place of the old flat track, have accepted the need for better maneuverability in the field. Another radical change in this tank is a new engine. The T-64 features a 5-cylinder flat pack engine which contributes to a low tank profile. The T-64 engine turns out from 700 to 750 horsepower in a tank weighing 38 metric tons. The tank is thought to have a speed of over 60 kilometers per hour and a road range of 450 kilometers. Its length is 9.1 meters and width is 3.4 meters, a bit shorter and a bit wider than the T-62. Location of the gunner's IR searchlight is to the left of the main gun, not to the right, as in the T-62, an important recognition feature for the T-64. In the T-64, the anti-aircraft machine gun can be fired while the tank commander is buttoned up. Another difference is that the T-64 uses 2 snorkels, one for the turret and the other equipped with an elbow for attachment to the engine exhaust. In the T-64, small arms ammunition and storage boxes are mounted around the sides of the turret. The Soviets also produce a command version of the T-64. There is no anti-aircraft machine gun. Ammo boxes are moved aft, and a 5-meter antenna on top of the turret augments the single whip antenna. But this 5-meter antenna generally is wired to the ground, immobilizing the command vehicle. The antenna storage tube is located with the snorkels. Given its expected position in the battle order, you are not likely to see much of the command T-64 until you have overrun their positions. But air and artillery sure would be interested in getting on it fast. Destroy command and control, and you've gone a long way toward winning the battle. As of the early 1980s, the T-64 shows up only in Soviet ground forces at home and in Soviet ground forces in East Germany and Hungary. That's a quick look at the T-64. Now let's go to the T-72. There are more of them, and they have been fielded to Warsaw Pact and Third World nations. As far as capabilities are concerned, however, you may think of both tanks as a single entity. Although the T-72 uses many proven components, it is a considerable improvement over the older tank series and represents a major change in Soviet tank design. On the automotive side, the T-72 uses a more powerful supercharged V12 engine, but delivers 780 horsepower and moves the tank out at 60 kilometers per hour over a road range of 450 kilometers. The T-72 weighs 41 metric tons, 3 tons heavier than the T-64. With the gun forward, the tank is 9.2 meters long and 3.5 meters wide. The turret roof is only 2.3 meters high, not much more than man-high, and lower than the M1 turret roof by 75 millimeters. The suspension system of the T-72 provides important recognition features. 6 large die-cast road wheels with rubber tires, evenly spaced, and a torsion bar suspension system with 3-track return rollers, enabling increased road wheel travel as compared with flat track systems and a much smoother ride. Track width is wide compared to U.S. tanks, giving the tank a low ground pressure. The track is steel with a single live rubber bushed pin, an improvement from earlier Soviet designs. All these changes provide increased cross-country mobility. Now let's look at the hull-related recognition and functional features unique to the T-72. The tank has a 12.7 millimeter anti-aircraft machine gun atop the turret, a newly designed weapon, but in the T-72 it cannot be fired while buttoned up. In this tank, the gunner's IR searchlight is located to the right of the main gun, the usual position in Soviet tanks, but it's a useful recognition feature because it helps you distinguish between the T-72 and the T-64, where the IR light is to the left of the main gun. Another identifier for the T-72 is the single snorkel tube, carried on the left side of the turret. Streamlined fenders are good identifiers for the T-72. They carry supplies, and the right fender carries some of the basic fuel load in fuel cells. So much for features unique to the T-72. The tank also displays many features common to both the T-64 and the T-72. In both tanks, there is a self-entrenchment device beneath the glacis plate. One sure identifier for both tanks is the sharply sloped glacis plate with its V-shaped water and debris deflector. In earlier Soviet tanks, glacis slope angle is about 60 degrees from the vertical. That angle in the T-64 and T-72 is nearly 70 degrees, a factor that contributes to frontal armor protection. Here's why. Even if armor thickness is the same as in previous tanks, by increasing the angle, protection is improved in T-64s and T-72s due to the longer path length that must be traveled by a penetrator. The Soviets have also taken other steps to increase armor protection. Track shields are available that extend from the hull, and full skirt protection is likely for the purpose of defeating both heat rounds and ATGMs. The net effect of this is greater armor protection in the front of the hull and turret. The T-64 and T-72 also feature nuclear biological chemical protection by means of positive pressure air filtration and a radiation shielding liner. Both tanks can cross trenches 2.7 meters wide, bore depths of 1.4 meters, and snorkel up to 5 meters. When you start talking armament and ammo, you're talking a whole new ball game in these two tanks. The 125 millimeter smoothbore main gun has a bore evacuator midway on the tube and thermal sleeves that indicate greater attention to main gun accuracy at long ranges. While limited to a depression of only 5 degrees, the gun is stabilized, and this, along with improved sights, markedly increases effectiveness of fire. Basic load for both tanks is 39 rounds. Loads include high explosive fragmenting, high explosive anti-tank, and hypervelocity armor-piercing discarding sabot rounds. All are fin stabilized. Adoption of heavier ammunition caused the Soviets to go to separate powder cases and projectors. The powder case burns up, and in the T-72, the case stub is automatically ejected aft, as we see here. In the T-64, the stub returns to the autoloader. Taking a close look at the armor-piercing discarding sable round, an additional charge packed around the penetrator helps give this round its high velocity, which is nearly 1,800 meters, or more than a mile per second, giving a 50% probability of a first round hit within 2,000 meters. Penetration capability for the kinetic energy high-velocity round is in excess of 300 millimeters of armor. The heat round is capable of penetrating in excess of 475 millimeters of armor. Both the T-64 and the T-72 are also equipped with a PKT 7.62 millimeter coaxial machine gun. These tanks also have smoke capabilities by way of engine exhaust thermal generators and other methods, such as externally mounted smoke barrels and smoke grenades. The Soviets have rearranged all tank internals so that all crew functions can now be served by 3 men, including tank commander, gunner, and driver. The loader has been replaced by an autoloader mechanism. The driver in these tanks is located on the midline forward of the turret, while the tank commander is at the right and the gunner at the left in the turret. Although these tanks have been considered small and cramped, the Soviets limit tank crews to 5 feet 6 inches, so interior space is not a serious issue. Stabilized optics, gun and automatic loading features afford a firing rate of 6 to 8 rounds per minute in automatic mode. That's a quick rundown on the T-64 and T-72 tanks. Now to summarize. These tanks are faster, more maneuverable, have greater protection as to armor and survivability in NBC environments, have a bigger gun and higher velocity munitions, improved anti-aircraft capability. They can move through and underwater with improved snorkeling ability, and they can fight at night. However, both the T-64 and T-72 have some weaknesses, so let's take a look at them and see how you can use them to your advantage. IR capability has not been improved, and effective range is still limited. All automated features, stabilized equipment, for instance, are maintenance intensive. In general, maintenance takes longer to accomplish than in our tanks. Also, the use of a standard transmission, a weak spot in the T-62s, may not have been corrected. Manual operation of the anti-aircraft gun in the T-72 exposes the gunner to attack. Engine compartment and tracks in both tanks are vulnerable on the flank, from the rear, and from above. But stowing fuel externally does not materially increase vulnerability to destruction by fire due to the high compression and high heat required to ignite diesel fuel. Auxiliary fuel carried in barrels at the rear will be removed prior to entering combat. Armor below the tank is thin in both tanks. Belly him up by obstacles or catch him cresting a ridge, and you've got him. No matter which tank you come up against, the T-64 or the T-72, the threat is about the same. Both tanks may be seen in Soviet ground forces in East Germany, among Warsaw Pact allies, and elsewhere in Third World forces. However, only one type of tank will be found in a regiment. Appearance of either tank in replacement for the other will indicate that different units have been committed. As always, both tanks will fight as part of a combined arms team supported by artillery, rockets, tactical air, helicopters, ATGMs, and motorized infantry. Because the Soviets are known to be beefing up tank support in their motorized rifle regiments, up from 31 to 40 tanks per battalion, tank density on the modern battlefield will be higher than ever before. In the offensive, tank guns may be used in the artillery role at extreme ranges, delivering suppressive fire with HE frag rounds directed at our tanks, ATGMs, observers, and infantry. HE frag rounds are a threat because they can damage a tank's exposed components such as tracks, optics, and antennas. Closer in, they will resort to direct fire with kinetic and chemical energy rounds and coaxial machine guns. Tank forces will be traveling on line, buttoned up for NBC protection. A approaching at high speeds, firing at high rates, with improved accuracy from a more stable platform, T-64 and T-72 tanks offer a serious challenge. In the face of this, we can counter the threat by tactics and flexibility. Go for crossfire, the flank and rear shots. Your turret traverses faster than his. Catch him with his main gun at the wrong angle. Keep moving. Use every bit of cover you can find to present him with the smallest possible target. Use smoke to defeat his electro-optics, both thermally generated and by grenade launchers. Nail him when he's belly up. If you can't kill him, disable him so that teamwork can finish him off. Keep that T-72 anti-aircraft gunner buttoned up. Make the job easier for attack helicopters. If you catch him snorkeling, knock off those snorkel tubes or explode rounds in the water. Let overpressures work for you. It's been said that the T-64s and T-72s are among the best medium tanks in the world today. But they can be defeated.
We've been awful fortunate to have worked with this vehicle for the past month and a half, receiving the training that we did.
Well, one thing comes to mind is that the troops in the field who are facing the T-62, the Soviet's main battle tank, don't know nearly as much as we do about the system. If you had the opportunity, what would you want to tell the guys in the field about this system? Let's get on it and refresh our memories. If you had to tell somebody about this system, what would be the first thing you'd want to tell them?
I think the first important consideration that I would tell the men would be the silhouette of the vehicle.
It is much smaller than ours. The height of the vehicle is 7.8 feet.
The M60 is 9.3 feet.
The width of the vehicle is 11.9 feet.
The M60 is 12 feet.
The length of the vehicle is 22.3 feet long.
The M60 is 22.7 feet.
And it weighs 40.2 tons.
The M60 weighs 52 tons. The T-62 has a 115 millimeter smoothbore cannon. The M60 has a 105 millimeter rifled cannon.
A feature the T-62 has that the M60A1 does not is the gyro compass mounted in the driver's compartment.
So the vehicle is generally a lot smaller than our system, which would give it a distinct advantage in a defensive position. But what about the track and suspension? What's that like?
Well, the track, it's a steel track. It has a Christie suspension. The track width is 1.6 feet.
The M60 track width is 2.3 feet. The tank utilizes support rollers with track that has rubber track pads. And the ground pressure is more than 1 pound less than ours, being 10.2 pounds per square inch, opposed to our 11.1 pounds.
On our vehicles, job the loader often has is that of actually putting the fuel in our system. What about on this vehicle? Where do you put the fuel in and how many tanks does it have on it?
There are 3 fuel cells located in the front of the vehicle and to the right of the driver, and these are internal fuel cells, and there are 3 external fuel cells on the right fender.
Is there any oil reserve that they have outside the vehicle?
Yes, there's external oil reserve on the left fender over the exhaust.
I find that the maintenance on the M60 is far easier. It's all you have to do to check the oils is pull up a grill door. To check the oil on the T-62, you have to release 28 different bolts to release the grills themselves, to spring them up to get to the oil. The lack of access to the maintenance facilities of the crew only having one tool, which does release the grill doors, makes it very difficult.
Looking at the vehicle, it doesn't look much different than our own. But I understand that the crew positions are somewhat changed. Where is the loader's position?
The loader's position is on the right, which is different from ours, and it makes it a left-hand load.
What about the TC and gunner?
Well, the gunner is sitting down behind the driver, which is on the left side of the vehicle.
Tank commander is directly behind the gunner, and standing up, he is pretty comfortable. It's a small area, but sitting down, he has to wrap his knees around his gunner.
In comparison to the M60, what's the cruising speed of this vehicle?
Both have the cruising speed of 30 miles an hour. With this one having the standard transmission and the M60 having the automatic transmission.
I understand the sights headrest in this particular vehicle is somewhat different than the one we have in our M60 series tanks.
The headrest on this side, I think, is really nice because it wraps around your head and keeps your head into a position that would keep a good eyesight picture on the target, even on a moving range.
Question for the tank commanders. Did you have any difficulties at all acquiring range?
Yes, sir. Particularly when we're on the move, I had extreme difficulty in ranging. In fact, I couldn't hardly range at all. It was more an estimation of range than it was using the rangefinder itself.
Was that steady like the one we have in our M551?
No, sir, it isn't. Our 551 measures the width. However, this steady rangefinder on this vehicle measures the height of the vehicle. That presents a definite problem, particularly if a vehicle is in a defilade position.
Once range has been determined utilizing either the tank commander's or the gunner's steady reticle, the gunner indexes that range on a ballistic range scale in his sight by turning a knob under the telescope. This applies super elevation to the system. Super elevation on the M60 is applied automatically when the tank commander uses his rangefinder. Looking through the stabilized sight, there is a distinct greenish tint. This enables the sight to cut through heat waves and haze that normally distort a gunner's view.
The high velocity of their APDS round needs less range data cranked in up to 2,100 meters, where the M60 firing similar ammo relies more on accurate range data beyond 1,800 meters.
Since the loader's periscope is permanently affixed, does that present any problems in the loading procedure?
No, sir, it doesn't. On this vehicle, the periscope is mounted to the floor from the front of the loader's hatch.
The loading function is similar to ours, except you have to load left-handed. The breech on the T-62 is side-sliding and takes some getting used to. A unique feature is the automatic ejection system, which throws the shell casings out a hatch in the rear of the turret.
The turret floor, for the loader specifically. How about describing that?
A small proportion of the turret floor in the T-62 moves with the main gun as in comparison to our entire basket.
I know that for a fact that when the T-62 is operating in a stabilized mode, that the gun goes into a detent. What is this detent?
Well, the detent is when the ejection system finally goes into recoil and extraction of the round. That is the loader's safety factor, which turns off all the main power.
The gun goes into max elevation into the air. It's like something waving at you. The main gun is going up and down and pretty big round, kind of tiring after a while.
The round is 42 inches.
Approximately 80 pounds. The gun does have a tendency to drift, and a lot of times the loader would have to go to the front, say, and get around. If he's not quick enough or if he has trouble, again, it could cause a problem because the gun's drifting and the gunner has no way of keeping it back on target.
At times, the tank commander acquires a target, and he uses his target designate system and lays on the target, but the gunner cannot see the target. The reason for that is, well, with the low silhouette, the gunner's sight is left of the main gun tube and just a little bit lower.
Tank commanders designate then can lay the gun tube on target. Does the tank commander have both power and manual controls for his designate system?
The tank commander has a manual control of his cupola, and the best procedure that I have found while operating the cupola is to put my chest right into the front of the tank commander's hatch, hang on to one to the top of the hatch, and my left hand being on the tank commander's target designate feature, and then manually moving right to left, searching for targets. That way I can lay my gunner on target when I do acquire one.
So the manual control is basically just your physical power that you have to move that cupola around then.
Yes, sir, it is.
How is it to operate then in the closed hatch?
In the closed hatch position, it's difficult for a few reasons. For one, the average height of a member is 5'6", and I'm 5'11", and so it's crowded. Also, you're crouched down. You have no way of putting your chest into anything. You have a handle on the right that I use with my right hand, and I also use the target designate handle on the left, and then I move it from left to right.
The gunner has a night periscope, an IR periscope. What other night fighting capability or night fighting optics does this vehicle have?
The vehicle has two searchlights, one mounted on the left side in front of the tank commander's hatch. The tank commander's IR is incorporated with his daylight sight. He flips the switch to change it to IR. It's an active sight. The other mounted on the right side in front of the loader's hatch and is operated by the gunner.
It takes the T-62 twice as long to get rolling.
Within the driver's station, it's a pretty interesting place.
I found that both in the shifting and in the steering, it's awful difficult for the driver to do it smoothly. The steering mechanism in this vehicle are two laterals, much like they have on our regular 113 type vehicles.
This particular vehicle doesn't have a neutral steer like we have on our M60. It has a pivot steer, just locking one track with the other track, walking around it. Manual transmission, of course, 5 speeds forward. It's an odd system. Most of our shifting works from left to right. Theirs starts in the middle, works to the left, ends up on the right. The reverse is marked as X3 opposed to being marked as a reverse system. I think, though, that if our drivers got into that T-62, that they would find the station very comfortable. To handle the T-62, if people have ever driven a large Dodge Brothers truck from about 1936, it drives just about the same way. Very difficult to shift. The system is supposed to idle at 700 RPM. It's hard to hold the idle there without killing the engine. The driver, if he was in a firing engagement, would be very, very hard-pressed to try to hold the vehicle on a path that the gunner could, in fact, acquire the target, lay on it, and start his actual firing. Everything happens immediately. As soon as the driver hits a detent in his steering, the vehicle responds immediately. There's no slippage.
I found that over most of the terrain, even some of the rough terrain, that it seemed to be a much smoother riding vehicle than the 60 due to the fact of the low profile, the center of gravity, and the suspension system of the vehicle. It didn't seem to, where ours seems to pitch you an awful lot, and the 62 doesn't seem to have as great amount of pitch to it.
When you're operating closed hatch, there is a very close relationship between the gunner and the tank commander, and the fact that the commander's knees are wrapped not so much around the gunner, but to the right and left of his back ribs. That, along with the traversing of the turret and watching out for, say, for example, loose clothing, bars sticking out of the turret, it's very close. But one thing I think we've got to mention here is the fact that the Russians, from what I understand, do not gear towards so much for crew comfort as towards the fighting mechanism itself.
Making a comparison with our 60, which vehicle did you find easier to load firing on the move? In other words, comparing the 62's gun going into detent where it is in a stationary position compared with the 60's gun, which is still moving in the stay position.
I'd have to say for the M60A1 because of the position of the round. On the T-62, you have your back turned to the gun. You just can't prepare yourself to load that second round until it goes into detent. Whereas with the 60, you could reach down, grab your round, and be ready to shove the other one home when the first round is fired.
If you're in a defensive position trying to acquire a target, either a M60 tank or a T-62 tank, which target could you acquire better?
In a defender position, I found it easier to acquire the 62 quicker, especially on a dry day. Located in the back where our grill doors would be, they have a cooling fan which creates a rooster tail from the dust. It sucks air up and dust, and it blows it into the sky, creating a rooster tail. And sometimes you could be sitting in a defender position and you see this rooster tail and you sit there, well, here it comes, and you may sit there 10, 15 seconds, maybe even longer before you even see this vehicle.
Given that both systems are in a defilade position, gun down, just looking over the top of a hill from the TC's position or the turret, turret defilade, who would be able to fire and who first?
The 60 crew, I feel, would be able to fire on a target quicker than the T-62 because on the 62, you have a elevation plus of 17 and a minus elevation of 4. Say you have that vehicle in a haul-down position where the tank commander can see the terrain out front of him and see what's coming. The gun tube, more than likely, is going to be pointing up in the air, and you're not going to be able to engage that target.
They have to come up far enough, mostly, shoulder belly underneath the tank, to bring the gun tube down far enough to fire on us, to where we could come up over hill and lay the tube practically down on top of the hill to where we just get our turret.
There's a ring-mounted 12.7 machine gun for anti-aircraft. On the M60, a 50 caliber is mounted in the TC dome.
Both tanks have a coaxial machine gun mounted on the loader side of the main gun.
What about the communications capabilities on board these vehicles?
Basically, the communication system on board the T-62 is similar to ours. It has an FM station, and basically the tank commander controls, say, his section by hand and arm signals.
Did you find that the intercom was any worse or any better than our own?
Except for the vehicle, there's a lot of noise and within the vehicle itself, and it gets a little hard to hear sometimes.
Our optimum target is the internal arrangement. Either left front for the driver, gunner, and TC, right front for the ammo and fuel, or the sight. We have many anti-tank weapons capable of killing the T-62. Either a tank-mounted shillelagh missile, the tow from the ground, or helicopter. The infantry also have the Dragon, the Law with its heat warhead, and at close range, hand grenades. It generates its own smoke screen to cover companion vehicles and infantry and to obscure anti-tank targets. While the M60 is designed to be used anywhere in the world, the T-62 is designed mainly for Europe. It can cross rivers using an onboard snorkel attachment to ford up to 15 feet of water and allow it to slide on the opposite bank, firing on the move for suppression or short hauls for accuracy. For deeper water, it piggybacks on a GSP ferry or rides across on a PMP ribbon bridge. The Soviet tanker is used to living in his gas mask and protective suit, even when pulling maintenance. He can decontaminate his tank himself or use a jet spray device.
You would have to take characteristics from the T-62 and the 60 itself to really compare to bring the one tank that you would like the best.
The 62 is a very good system for what they have, and they're trained on that system. It's very noisy, it's very cramped.
There's some bad points on the 62 and there's some good points on the 62. Bad on the 60 and good on the 60. And if you compare good ones on both tanks to one tank, it'd be one hell of a tank.
I guess if I were asked to summarize our feelings and attitudes about both these vehicles, I'd say the T-62 is a good tank. It will do all the things that you would ask a tank to do on a battlefield and do them very well. However, our overall feeling would be that the M60 is a better tank. That given the crew on the M60 does the things it's been trained to do, both in gunnery and tactical training, that will be able to defeat the T-62 in one-on-one tank combat.